So now let's figure out who is here to help, who are the new members of the Buffalo Bills. And the first domino to fall was, I would say, a bit of a surprise for me. The Bills trading for DJ Moore. So this was similar, where there was kind of a wave of information. What was your immediate reaction when the news broke?
Yeah, so I think the first report that I saw was from Ian Rappaport, which said we're acquiring DJ Moore for a mid-round pick.
Yes.
And I was like, amazing. That's great. That's our wide receiver one, by far the best wide receiver on the team. Mid-round pick, I'm thinking, third, fourth, fifth, sixth round, something like that. And then the more I'm sitting with it, I'm like, well, but he had like a $24.5 million cap hit. I wonder if the Bears are going to retain any of that salary. And then I'm going down this whole rabbit hole of, okay, well, maybe if they do retain some salary, we give up like a third or a fourth. And if they don't retain any salary, then it's only going to take like a fifth or a sixth. And so I'm going through all of this in my head. And then there's the new report, Bills give up a second round pick. And I was like, wait, when was a second round pick ever on the table? That was not what Ian Rappaport said.
Yeah. So obviously mid-round pick has differing definitions. To me, my mind went to hopefully a fifth, but I'm cool with a fourth. That was just immediately what went through my head was like, hopefully it's a fifth. If it's a fourth, I'm cool. This is good stuff. I like DJ Moore. I really, really wanted him at one point. There's a little bit more risk now that he had a bit of a down year, but I put an awful lot of that into the relationship basket with Caleb Williams and his inability to play within structure and hit him when he's open. And I watched some of those reels and clips of like him over and over again, running the route, being open, ready for the ball. And then like his visual frustration at not getting the ball. And then unfortunately showing visual frustration, I don't think helped the relationship with Caleb. Caleb not being happy with the relationship made him even more vocal about his frustration. I think that snowballed the wrong way. So I think plenty of that is relationship and like locker room stuff versus DJ Moore getting old. You can watch the tape. That dude roasted some really good top end corners. So I broke down my thread and when I reacted in the different pieces. The player, I'm very happy. I'm happy to add him. I think he's a really good addition. I think we've shown what he can do in a Joe Brady offense. I think he's going to be the kind of guy who can get open in a way that flashes visually to Josh Allen, which is what he's thrived in. Like the open, I can get the ball in there with other humans can't, and we'll take advantage of that. I think he's actually going to get more targets than what some people think. I think he's going to really get peppered with a fair amount. I then even moved to, in a vacuum, DJ Moore, the player, for pick 60 and getting back a fifth. I'm actually fine with that. Like that's in a vacuum, that's fine. Now you add in that, yeah, but he's also already on a pretty substantial contract. I think that should have been some discount on the acquisition cost. And then there's a piece that we'll get to a little later in the show. There hasn't been any reporting yet on the formality of the third-year guarantee, which also means there hasn't been any formal reporting on him restructuring his contract. I am of firm belief that those two things are tied together and that we will see the guarantee language formally added to his contract when they restructure it and create the contract space from it. I think there was kind of a trade-off of, hey, we want you to feel good about coming here. The Bears don't automatically build in contract restructures the way that the Bills do. So I am interpreting that as being able to add that piece of it in. But we'll see. When the formal paperwork gets filed and everything gets done, we'll figure out where that goes and what the space was. But ultimately, I tried to calm people that it's very reasonable to be disappointed in the acquisition cost. I think I am disappointed in the acquisition cost. I think we slightly overpaid in what we should have. But that's way, way different than, oh, this guy isn't good and isn't going to be impactful for the team. He's very good and he's going to be very impactful for the team. I just think we could have gotten a really nice value or a bonus in how we got him.
Yeah, well, even when you're talking about the relationship maybe straining between DJ Moore and Caleb Williams, you also have to look at how Chicago built that receiving core over the last 2 years. They drafted Rome Odunze in the first round, and then Colston Loveland in the first round, and Luther Burden in the second round. That same draft. So they added 3 new weapons in the first and second round within the last 2 years. So Moore kept falling down in the pecking order of who was getting targets as rookies like Loveland and Burden came on this year. But then also on the flip side, you look at like the trade that the Steelers pulled off for Michael Pittman, where it's a round 6, round 7 pick swap for a receiver that's probably a similar caliber of player to who DJ Moore is. And that's like a day 3 pick swap. So that goes to your point of maybe overpaying a little for the player. But at the same time, I'd rather overpay for a player that has the proof of concept that DJ Moore has.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. And one of the fun things about doing a show during live action is that news can break. So, Colin, what is your immediate live reaction to the Buffalo Bills have just signed
Wow.
Geno Stone?
So this comes obviously less than 24 hours after signing another safety, CJ Gardner-Johnson, who we'll get to later. That was a 1-year deal for a 28-year-old safety. So I figured there was probably room in there to draft someone early or maybe acquire another veteran down the line. I wasn't expecting it necessarily to be this early, but obviously he has starting experience both with the Ravens and the Bengals. It'll be curious to see what the contract details are. I assume it won't be too much, but I like to see the Bills shoring up their safety depth and getting some veterans in the room to pair with Cole Bishop as a rising star.
100%. I mean, Geno Stone's started, every single game the last 2 years for the Bengals and every single game the last 3 years for the Bengals and Ravens, 53 starts here the last couple of years, and is coming in. He's 26 years old. So, he's going to turn 27 here in a couple of weeks. So still a young, active player. This is super interesting to me, and I think speaks to the vision of Jim Leonard in that he plays a lot of multiple looks, a lot of nickel, but nickel with 3 safety, dime with 3 safety, three front end players. Now getting to that structure is going to give him more optionality where it's not as clean as, Dee Alford replaces Taron Johnson, CJ Gardner-Johnson's the other starter. That's it. Like CJ Gardner-Johnson is, and we're talking about a guy that we didn't even get to in the show yet, that can play in the overhang, play in the nickel, play, move around. That Alford can play outside and play inside. Geno Stone is a guy who can play deep, but can also play in the overhang, can play in the nickel. I love having those options to move guys around and be able to really put this together with different tools to use in the right sets, and that being able to have guys like Gardner-Johnson and Geno Stone who can both bring the lumber in the run game, that gives you options to be able to have dime looks that you don't lose as much and get caught, where you can have guys like that coming off each side, both really good blitzers, guys who can bring pressure really, really well. So I think that's a really interesting approach, and I'm excited to see, just give him more weapons and guys to move around. I think that's a really fun ad. So it's cool. We got to break news here as we go. We just brought him up 4 different times. Let's kind of skip the order and now go to CJ Gardner-Johnson. Maybe the sneaky oldest 28-year-old in the league. Like, if you had told me, I was like, oh, that's awesome. Like, what is he, like 32, 33 now? The dude's 28 years old. I was flabbergasted. I'm going to get Bills fans excited and warn you, he is immediately going to be a Bills fan favorite. He talks as much or more trash than any player in the NFL except for Josh Allen. He is going to talk a ton of trash. It's going to be so much fun. And he's going to get multiple unsportsmanlike penalties that are going to annoy the crap out of us, and that probably is going to happen in a moment when it shouldn't, and we're going to be super, super annoyed. So just brace yourself. You're going to love him. It's going to be awesome, and then you're also going to curse his name on more than one occasion when he can't shut up and is going to keep talking trash. But it's going to be really, really fun when he's doing it if we're winning. And kudos to Mike over at Buffalo Plus, that He's been on the Eagles twice here in the last couple of years, and both times he was on the Eagles. Mike Catalana, sorry. Both times he was on the Eagles, they went to the Super Bowl. So I'll take that. Playing in the 3-4 defense, he's worked well. He's a guy that Eric's a big fan of his. Anthony Prohaska's a big fan of his. He is not a perfect player. He gets overly aggressive. He'll miss some tackles, but that dude throws his body around like crazy. He makes plays on the ball. He gets interceptions. He gets tip balls. He forces fumbles. He lays huge hits. He's going to miss a tackle here or there. He's going to play probably like a slightly less disciplined Jordan Poyer, younger Jordan Poyer. But there's going to be a lot of fun with a player like that. And now adding in, we'll get to Dee Alford in a moment, but him and Geno Stone, I love that vision because I swear I had the thought at the moment. It's like, oh, if we hadn't have signed Alford, I kind of sneaky like Gardner-Johnson as our new nickel more than as our deep safety. So now adding Geno Stone, I love that optionality that, hey, we have these 3 guys for those 2 spots. And when we play dime, I'm really happy with this combination.
Yeah, I had the same thought you did about CJ being like our big nickel potentially in 5 DB sets, but then with the signing of Dee Alford as well, that kind of contradicts that a little bit. Yeah, he's a baller. That was one of the words I used to describe him. Bill's Chat podcast also said he's an asshole, and the Bills need more assholes on defense. That's completely true. I also think I figured out why. The consensus seems to be that people think he's 31 or 32 years old, and that's because he speed runs switching teams. He's been in the NFL for 7 years, and he's been on the Saints, the Eagles, the Lions, back to the Eagles, to the Bears, to the Texans, and now the Bills. So he's switching teams so often that, in your head, you kind of think, oh, he's been on so many teams. He's been in the league so many years. That's really not the case, but that's also just because of, I think his personality might not be the best for every locker room, and, maybe he doesn't gel with everyone, but if the Bills have the culture that they seem to talk about having all the time, that's one of the hallmarks of the Buffalo Bills is the culture that they have in their locker room. If one guy can make that culture dissolve, then you never had a culture to begin with.
Great call. Really well said. I think that's the right way to look at it. And that when you have guys like Josh Allen, Deion Dawkins, players like that in your locker room, even in the secondary, guys like Christian Benford, like I feel like we're in a very good space to bring in a little bit of swagger, a little bit of attitude, and that, like you said, if that one guy upsets the entire apple cart here and tips the whole thing over, I think that then you have to question what you built in the first place. That's really well said. I think it's a great way to look at it.
We also don't know all of the details about his contract either, because it was 1 year up to $6 million. So I saw like someone saying like, oh, we got more than Jaquan Brisker. We don't even know what the cap hits.
Brisker got $5.5 million. The reason he only got $5.5 million is because of the injury issue. When he's on the field, he's very, very good. He's a better run defender.
Right.
Gardner-Johnson is better in coverage. Brisker isn't always great in coverage, but he's a great hitter and great in the box. And I would have been very happy with him. The reason his market didn't materialize the way that it is because he doesn't stay on the field and has a very serious, concussion history. So again, I'm not changing it. I was shocked when I saw Brisker's contract. I can also tell you there's no chance that those 2 signings happened 15 minutes apart by coincidence.
Right.
Like very much so. I guarantee the Bills were in on Brisker and then got to the point of, oh, well, no, with all your injury history, we're willing to pay this. And I'm guessing it was probably what they gave Gardner-Johnson, which I'm going to guess is $3.5 million, and then incentives that could go up to $6 million. I would guess CJ Gardner-Johnson's cap hit is probably going to be closer to $3 or $3.5 million. And I'm going to guess that Geno Stone is that same ballpark. I'm going to guess he's like $3.5 million, maybe some incentives above there, but probably similar range, maybe a touch lower, but that same ballpark.
Yeah. Geno Stone was a pending free agent, so that would hypothetically influence the compensatory pick formula depending on how high the cap hit is. So we'll just watch out for that.
I will even take it a step further and guess that he is very strategically at the level that they are guessing is just below the threshold, which this year I think is going to end up $3.5-4 million. I think that's going to end up being the cutoff in years. That number keeps coming up. You guys remember a couple of years ago, the number was like 2.3 million ish. And we all of a sudden signed a whole bunch of guys at like 2.2 and 2.3 million the year that we were trying to get the picks. I think we ended up getting screwed that year on where Tremaine Edmonds' pick fell. But this year, I think we're going to have a whole bunch of offers at like 3 million, 3.2 million, and then incentives that they could earn more later on, which if a guy earns more and ends up counting against a comp pick, but if a guy hits a bunch of incentives, it means he played awesome. So like, okay, we don't get a 6th round pick because CJ Gardner-Johnson played awesome. Cool. That's a win.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't, or he plays just okay, then the other idea gives you that coverage or that insurance to be able to cover it. Okay, so now we've kind of worked our way sideways. We have 2 more ads. Let's stay in the secondary.
Yes.
Dee Alford was one that like Eric, both of us said, I didn't do any research on nickel corners because I assumed we were keeping Taron Johnson. I did have a couple on my original list. We're like, well, if we want to hedge or add some depth, I know that the same way we just explained, I know that Jim Leonard likes to use kind of some variability in some of the different positions that played 2 guys at once or moving different guys around. So I had like Roger McCreary on there, Cam Taylor-Britt, who has some flexibility to play both inside and outside. Dee Alford is a guy who has punt return ability, has returned punts in the past, and has been the starting nickel and has played a lot of snaps for the Falcons the last couple of years. Really fast guy. Probably not as good of a tackler as Taron, but probably a little better in coverage now than Taron,
especially at this stage in Taron's career.
Yeah, for sure. And is obviously a better athlete right now. Probably is a better athlete than Taron ever was, but is a better athlete, faster guy for sure now than Taron was. So we're probably trading a little bit from a run defense standpoint, but in the whole, when you add Geno Stone and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, you're bringing plenty of lumber there. So having a guy who can turn and run in obvious passing situations, they even had some snaps playing safety and playing deep. I think is an interesting athlete to mix in there. So again, I'm not going to pretend like he was on my radar or on my wish list or anything that I was looking at, but now seeing the totality of what they've added, I like the combination of what that secondary looks like and the options they have to put it together.
Yeah, absolutely. And when there's a guy that you don't do a lot of research on, one of my first things that I go to is the comments of the post that saying that player signed with the new team. And there were a bunch of Falcons fans in there saying, no, how did we let Dee Alford leave? Why would we let him leave? Which is always a good sign, obviously, because typically fans are going to be the biggest critics of your team's players. And so the fact that they were all disappointed to see him leave, and then you had Falcons players, especially in the secondary, young guys like Xavier Watts and Billy Bowman, posted on social media about how Alford was a great leader and a great teacher in the locker room. It just seems like a perfect fit for the Bills. And you're getting a guy when the other team's fans and players are sad to see him leave.
Yeah, 100%. And I think also you heard Chauncey Gardner-Johnson talking about Dee Alford. And going that way. And I know Atari here was saying great coverage will also help the pass rush get home. That is, so Jim Leonard is much more about playing games and tricking you to get players home than, oh, here's the 4 guys that are coming. They're coming and our guys are just so much better. They're going to beat you, which guess what? That other plan works better in the playoffs when it's not just, hey, my guys are better than your guys. You want, the game plan and scheme that's going to allow you to trick the offense and get that big play when you need it. And having those guys who can turn and run in man coverage, which now Christian Benford, Max Harrison, Cole Bishop, some combination of, heck, it might even be taking some of the linebackers off the field. Maybe we're playing with one linebacker, which we'll get to linebacker here in a minute.
That might be all we have right now on the roster.
That might be, we might only have one linebacker, so this is great. This is working out perfect. We're going to be a base dime defense. This is going to work great. But in all seriousness, you can then have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Geno Stone, both in an overhang. You can have, Dee Alford, trailing with a slot receiver that's moving or even dropping back into a deep third, into the deep middle, but having Cole Bishop, Geno Stone, and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, all guys who can play in the box, play the overhang, play the nickel, play deep. You're able to move those things around. I think this is super, super interesting. I will say all these additions, I know there's a lot of people on the Dylan Thieneman draft train at pick 26. I'm going to guess that 3 additions that all have the ability to play that versatile role that he would have brought. I'm going to guess that's not our pick, but you never know. If maybe we keep adding, we'll talk about our remaining wish list here in a moment. But I think that's dropped down the need list. I'm very happy with the additions we've made here. I feel good about the secondary. Like game one, I'm ready to go. We have 6 guys who can all play, and it's hard to ask for a lot more than that.
Yeah, I still had safety pretty high as a possibility for the first round after the Gardner-Johnson signing, just because that was 1 year. And
I expected another addition. I did think it was going to be in the draft. And still, very well, we need a 4th safety. Still drafting a guy in I'm going to say right now, day 3 makes a ton of sense to shadow behind Geno Stone and Gardner-Johnson. I do think it's dropped down the need list quite a bit.
Yeah, I would not be surprised with another safety being added to the room at some point in the draft, and then probably bringing in another corner as well for the boundary, either a veteran in free agency or a day 3 guy in the draft, or both as well, just because you can never have enough corners in the NFL.
100%. And again, now that we traded our 2nd round pick for DJ Moore, I am very much, I think I saw it here, very much team trade down. So, I'd love to trade down, recoup some of that, get me back into the 3rd round with something, drop us down into the 40s. I think the difference of the player at 26 and the player at 45 is negligible. Let's drop down, get somebody that makes sense, pick up another one of those picks and take another shot at it. Okay, so we've covered the secondary, and the reason that the comment earlier about coverage helping pass rush comes into play is we've also added, but the biggest addition here was Bradley Chubb, and a guy that I did have on my list of potential pass rushers, and I thought was a possibility because of the history playing in Denver and playing his best football as a 3-4 outside linebacker. I did think was a possibility and was a guy there, kind of like a Dante Fowler Jr., Malcolm Kuntz, like those kind of guys I was thinking of who had experience in that role. I will say, I'm going to put this similar to DJ Moore, where I'm going to separate the cost from the player. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more health risk discount in his contract. I think we paid as though we're planning on him being healthy and playing for 3 years, which is, of course, I hope is the case. He is a guy that I think did not have a lot of repetitive, like soft tissue injuries and things like that. Like in multiple of his seasons, he played, quite a bit, but he had multiple bigger injuries, including a torn ACL and, missed games in some of those. So, most of his seasons at 16 games, but he's got, some pretty major injuries he's had to overcome. I don't mind that we're 2 years out from his injury. When he's healthy, it's 12 sacks, 11 sacks, 8.5, 7.5. He's a guy that produces as a pass rusher. I think we're 2 years out. Before the last one before the injury, like 83 pressures, like a big time productive pass rusher. But I just would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that baked into the contract. So we're still waiting on the terms. We haven't seen the details. The overall announcement sounds like it's like 12 or 13 million a year. So I'm still waiting to see exactly how that's going to be baked in the structure and where that goes. He's a guy that I really like when he's on the field. I would have just liked to have had a little bit more discount in the acquisition cost that, took that into account to help out there. So I'll separate the same exact as DJ Moore. Really good player. Excited about him being on the team. I thought we probably paid full price for him, but that's what happens when you go shopping at free agency.
Yeah, so when I saw the initial report, I saw $43.5 million, and I was like, oh my God, that is a lot for Bradley Chubb. And then I realized it was because it was a 3-year deal, which I was not expecting a guy with that injury history to sign a contract at that length. I was expecting a 1 or 2 year deal for him, especially as he gets up there in age as well. But 3 years, so we'll see if there's a potential out after the 2nd year, because based on the guarantees, it looks like that could be a possibility. But also that is kind of what it costs to get a starting caliber edge rusher these days. I mean, you look at what the other guys were getting in free agency. Draymond Jones was getting $12 million a year. Joseph Osai, 11.5. Kayvon Chason, 11. Malcolm Kuntz,
Jordan
11.
Jordan Phillips has the same injury history as Bradley Chubb, and he got $30 million a year.
Jalen Phillips.
Jalen Phillips, yeah. Jordan Phillips is good at making money too. But yeah,
Jalen
Phillips.
Who paid Jordan Phillips $30 million?
It's wait till you see the comp pick for it. It's going to be fantastic. Yeah, but Jalen Phillips, also two major injuries, just had his first healthy season in forever. His highest sack total is 8.5. His best seasons are 8.5, 7, 6.5, and 5. He got 30 million. Bradley Chubb has had 12, 11, 8.5, and 8.
Yeah, you're betting on the upside with Phillips there for sure. Yeah. And I think maybe what Chubb and his agent were able to argue is that since he was a full year removed from that ACL, sometimes they say that's a 2-year recovery process. So Chubb will be fully past that by the time it's week 1 again of his first year in Buffalo. So that probably works in Chubb's favor. So could you argue the Bills overpaid by maybe $2 million based on what the market was? Sure. But based on the experience he has and what his ceiling is, if he can stay healthy, the proof of concept is there. Where again, that's another guy where because of what he's been able to do in the past, I'm fine overpaying for that a little rather than betting on upside that we haven't seen yet.
100%. And I do think, as RJ said here, when you're talking about the fact of, if we got him for 10, we'd be really excited, but we paid like 13.5. That's probably okay. Like that's the premium of going shopping in free agency. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm optimistic about what we got here. We're going to be crossing our fingers from a health standpoint, but again, he's not a guy that was constant soft tissue injuries. It was 2 major injuries. So now we're the second year out from that second one. If he's good, and he did play, pretty extensively last year, he just played 17 games. So he missed 0 games last year. I think there's reason to be confident about that. If he plays well, we're in great shape. And if he plays that well coming off in the second year off of it, in this scheme that he's been his most productive in, I think he's still a double-digit sack guy. And his spin asked here, does Chubb count against the comp pick formula? He does not, because he got released by the Dolphins. So I do think that's also, I think, 2 factors. One, I think we shrank our shopping list to guys who wouldn't be as impactful on the comp pick formula. I do think that was something in their mind. Also, guys who were a scheme fit for the new scheme for Jim Leonard, also guys that Jim Leonard specifically wanted or targeted. If you make that Venn diagram, the shopping list of guys they were after was probably a bit smaller than some fans maybe had on their wish list. So having that and being able to accomplish it, I feel pretty good about where that is. Again, same as DJ Moore. I'm super excited for the player. I wish we could have got a little bit more value on how we acquired him, but I'll take it, and we'll go from there. Yeah. I want to do a couple of the super chats here. Go ahead.
I was gonna say real quick about Bradley Chubb. Our One Pass members maybe knew a couple days in advance that was something in the works from the Bills, from their side of things. So just a reminder to sign up for our Discord, where you're going to get maybe some breaking news or some news before it breaks, if you want to word it that way, about what the Bills could be looking at in terms of free agency, the draft. There's always some good nuggets in there.
Yeah, so a couple guys, we'll get to another retention here in a moment that fans got to know about beforehand with Connor McGovern, and some things with adding Bradley Chubb. So always fun to be in the Discord, where, again, we're not like a news breaking organization, so we don't kind of do those things publicly, but we do try to share that with the folks who follow us. When we find out about things, we try to share those things. So it's great idea to shout that out.